Tech by Tips.
Hello and welcome to another Tech by Tips video. In today's video we're going to be working on the implementation of the SpotWeb application after our video where I was explaining what Usenet and SpotNet is. SpotWeb is a very specific implementation of SpotNet, so we're going to be deploying this to use it as a private indexer of Usenet content for our Arrs. So if we go here into the GitHub website, we'll find the repository located in github.com/spotweb/spotweb. And if we come here, we can see that this is basically a decentralized community. And it has been released 36 times. It's currently on version 1.5.8. That's really good. It's pretty advanced already. It has 72 contributors. It's a good and healthy amount of people working on this project, so that's nice. And if we go here into the description, we can see that SpotWeb is a decentralized Usenet community based on the SpotNet protocol, meaning that it's basically like your own little Usenet indexer with all the features that entails. And it runs on PHP 7.2, and it uses either a Postgres or MySQL database as its backend to store the data. And if we go here, we can see that the features of this application amongst all of them are, it's pretty fast. You can filter a lot of things to find the content that you want. You can put comments on the spots, and you can also create spots. And it allows you to show and filter on spots based on the last view. You can create a watch list. You can download multiple spots very easily in a single NZB, and you can run it in Synology and QNAP. It rates the spots. It integrates easily with your Arrs and even with the Python-based applications. It's platform independent. You can run it basically anywhere: Linux, BSD, Windows. And it has the ability to report spam and handle that. It allows you to notify. It also keeps statistics of your spots in the system. It integrates with SAP NZBD and NZBGet. Has multiple languages. You can have multiple users, and it's an open source project. Now, this project is created thinking of like an old-fashioned infrastructure where you have a server and then you install a web server there and all the stack and stuff. But some people have taken this and containerized the application. Unfortunately, it's not an official container, but so far there are at least 2 or 3 good, well-maintained containers for this application that we can rely on. So if you continue here, just basically telling you how to install it on a VM, but we're not going to be doing that, right? So now the thing I would do is I would go into Docker Hub, and then I would do a quick search of SpotWeb, and then we'll find here, the options that are available. The most famous or most downloaded one is this one, Giju's Broek SpotWeb. But I'm gonna go with the Eric de Vries SpotWeb version. They have several images, including for Raspberry Pis and stuff, so I'm gonna go with this one, but you can pick any one of these. You can also go with NetSpeedy. It's basically the same thing. I just also noticed that Eric de Vries updates his images very fast, so that's another thing I liked. So if you click there, you'll see details about what you need to do to set it up. Here it tells us that we need to set up a database for the backend. In this video, I'm going to be using MariaDB, which is basically a MySQL database in the backend. And I'm going to run it in a container also. So this time we'll see how to run the database in a container for this application. And we need to specify a few things here. For example, it says that we need to specify the host, the port, the name, the user, and the password to connect to the database. And so those are things that we have to specify in the environment variables. And obviously, since we're going to have a container running our database, it means also that we need to have a folder where we're going to hold all the files for this database. So those are the main highlights that we need to identify first before we work on the project. So let's go ahead and create those folders that are necessary here. So the first thing, I'm going to create a project here for SpotWeb, and I'm also going to create a folder for the container, but this is going to be for the database, honestly. So here's where we're going to have the database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another folder here called database, so I know that that's what I'm storing in here. And now that we have the two folders that we need, which is the folder to contain our database information and our project, then I can go ahead and work on creating a project for this. So let's create another project. I'm going to call it SpotWeb, and I'm going to look for this directory that I just created for the project. Select it, and then I'm going to create a new Docker Compose file. I need to put something in here to get to the next step, so let me just find something to dump in there for now. So for now, I'm just going to put this, which is the basic, and let's do a next, don't trigger, build, and done, so that then we can see this in a bigger screen and we can work on this Docker Compose file. Alright, so let's go into the SpotWeb project here, go to the YAML configuration, and now we can work on setting this up. So here we're defining the version of the Docker Compose, the services that we're defining a SpotWeb container. So this is for the application, but we also need to create another one for the database. So let's go step by step. So for this application, we're going to use the Eric DeVries SpotWeb latest image. We're going to name this SpotWeb, and then I'm going to set up the usual environment variables here. Alright, I copied the rest of the code so we can just discuss it. And here are the environment variables that I'm defining. Again, is my time zone, which is in my case America, New York. I'm assigning the user 1026, which is the default administrator when you create the Synology NAS the first time. And then the information for the application to connect to the database that we're going to be setting up. I said that I'm going to be using port 3306 because that's the default port that the database offers in MySQL. And then the database host is going to be SpotWebDB without an underscore because that's how I'm going to name that service. And the database name is going to be SpotWeb, the username is SpotWeb, and the password is SpotWeb. Obviously, if you're going to expose this, you should get something more complicated here and different, not put the same thing. And then there's a cron interval here that has to be specified, so that's done there. And then the ports, in this case for the NAS, I believe I've used all the way down to 8072, so I'm going to use 8071 for this. And the container is a web server that listens on port 80, so that's what I'm going to put here. And now it says that for this container to start, I need the database to be up first. So that's why I have a depends on SpotWeb underscore database. And I'm going to say this container has to be restarted unless I manually stop it. And now we define the container for the database here. So this is going to be container for database. And we're going to be using the Linux servers MariaDB latest image. And I'm going to name this service SpotWeb underscore DB, just like I specified here and here. And I'm going to name it SpotWeb-DB in the container name. And now I'm going to specify the environment variables that are necessary for this container. So the default root password is going to be strong password written like this. Again, the user that is necessary for this to work. And the time zone that belongs to my case. And then the MySQL database, the user and the password that I specified up here, which is SpotWeb for all of those. And now we have to mount the volume for the database information. So in my case, let's go here, let's do a properties and copy all of this, and then let's replace this because this is the improper one. So there we go. Now we have the folder that I specified to hold all my database stuff is going to be mounted to the /config directory inside the database container. Here I've commented out the ports because we don't really need to expose the database container to anywhere. It's just going to connect from one container to the other, so that's not necessary. And again, we restart the container unless we manually stop it, and that's basically all that we need to create the SpotWeb application container and the database for the SpotWeb application. So now we should be able to go and click save and then build, and then wait until it pulls the container image and starts the containers and stuff. So I'll be back when that is done and we'll see the progress of that. Alright, it has finished, so let's go into the containers here and see what we get. We have 2 containers that have been created. Let me clear this notification here. And one of them is the application, SpotWeb, and the other one is a database. Let's first go into the database container and go into the logs. And it says that it is starting up with the proper user, setting up the initial databases and installing it into the folder that we specified. So if we go here and refresh, we should see that it should start creating files here sometime soon. There we go, we have databases and stuff like that, so that's good. We have to wait though until this database container tells us that it's ready to start accepting connections. So remember that we said to SpotWeb, don't even try to run until you know that this container is working and healthy and accepting connections. So you have to be patient until you see that notification here letting you know that it is working. I'll continue refreshing here and I'll come back when I see that message. Oh, another important thing to note is that you need to have a good amount of storage in your NAS, because this database can get quite big because, you know, it's populating a lot of spots that are daily being pushed into Usenet and stuff. So make sure you have enough space in your NAS to hold a chunky database here in these files. We can confirm here that the database is still not ready because we refreshed the logs in the application and it says that it still can't connect to the database. So that lets us know that also the database is not ready. Alright, my lab is a little underwhelming. So it took about 20 minutes for the database to get itself up and running. And finally you can see that it created files and then it shut down and removed some temporary databases and stuff. Then it started up again and it says database setup completed. And then it says that the server is ready to listen to for connections. So now we can go back into the SpotWeb application per se and see what the logs in the application tells us, if it was able to connect to the database and all that stuff. So let's go to the logs, and as we can see, it stopped waiting for the database because it was able to connect here at this point, and now it was making changes to the database. So this is going to be another process that takes a little bit of time. It's going to be adding columns and stuff to the different tables that it needs to get the application up and running. So in my case, my lab is a little slow, so I'll probably say 30 more minutes or something like that, and then we should come back here when we see some message that says that the application is working and listening. So I'll be back when that is done. This is going to continue doing its thing. You have to understand that this is normal. It is creating a database structure of files, and then after that it has to actually implement changes into the data that it is actually holding in there. So be patient. If you don't see the application responding, always follow the logs and see what is going on. Alright, it was painfully slow for me. It took about an hour or a little over an hour for the application to get itself running, and as we can see here, it reset the password for the admin user to SpotWeb, and it says that it was started. So we should be able to go now into the IP of the NAS and then port 8071 in my case, which I've selected, and then see if we can get the interface. And here we go. This is the user interface of the SpotWeb application. Currently nothing is configured, so if you click on any other categories here, you will see absolutely nothing. So now we have to basically configure this application so that it works for us. So to do that, we already saw that it said that there's a admin user with the password SpotWeb, so we can go and click here where it says login, and then we say login, and we put admin and SpotWeb as the user and login, and here we go. Now we're logged in as the administrator for the SpotWeb instance, as you can see here. Now if we can change the password, to do that we can hover over here and then say change user, and then you have the option here to change the password, change the name and all that. I'm not going to do it. This is just for the sake of the video. I'm not going to use this instance, but that's how you do that. And now you should be able to then do the configuration of the application. If you click here where it says config, and then you go into settings, this is where you do the configuration thing, which the main thing you have to do here is go into the news servers, and you have to put the information of our Usenet provider here. For example, I'm going to give you what it would look like if you're going to use the European servers of SpotWeb. In that case, you would put something like eu.astraweb.com if you're going to use the European one. If you're going to use the US one, you put us.astraweb.com. Then you will put your username here and your password here. And then in here, you would select where it says encryption to make sure that you use SSL, and then you would put the port for the connection. In the case of SpotWeb, it would be 563, and then you can just click on change, and when you do that, it's going to update that to be your news provider, and then it's going to start scanning the Usenet for the things that you can get there. But before we can do that, before we can start scanning, we also have to do something here where it says retrieve. So we're going to click there, and in here we have to update this to work according to our Usenet provider. So for example, if we're using SpotWeb, we get about 4,000 days of retention. So that is a good amount of time. Let me use the calculator real quickly. So 4,000 divided by 365 days a year, that's about almost 11 years back that you can go in the servers in Usenet. So then you have to say from when do you want to start scanning Usenet. So if we go back 11 years from now, that'll be around 2014. So I can say I want to start scanning on January 1st of 2014. Let's just say something like that. And then we can say if we're interested in the comments, and if you want to retrieve the full spots and stuff, you can specify what you want here. I just like this one, the full comments. And then you just click change. And when you make those changes, now it knows how far back it can look inside Usenet for content based on your provider. And it already knows which provider you have. So then it'll start scanning Usenet, and then eventually you'll see that the sections here will start populating with content. So you just have to give it time, and then come back into SpotWeb, and you'll see stuff coming up in here. Let's just give it some time. I'll be back when that is done. Now, we need to create a user for our Arrs to be able to get an API key to query what we get in here in SpotWeb. So for that, what we're going to be doing is, first of all, if we go into users and group management here, you'll see that it creates some random user here, but we can't really use that one because we don't have an option here where it allows us to change the password to then log in as that user. So we're going to go back and we're going to create a new user. So I'm going to go here where it says admin, and then add user, and then I'm going to name a user, for example, Arrs, domain local or something like that. Okay, so now when we click add, it should create that user in the SpotWeb application. So now the user is created, but I don't have the password. I'm going to go into user management. And now I'll see the Arrs user here. I can click on its name, and then I can set up a password here. So let's say Arrs. And here you will see the API key that you're going to be needing for your Prowlarr application to successfully query information from this application. So now we can click change to change the password. Oh, the password is too short. Okay, so let's do Arrs. See if that works. And now it worked. So we have changed the password for that account, and we need that API key that we saw here. So let me just copy all of this, and then we're going to be able to use this to set up our Prowlarr to connect to this application. So now let's go back in here into the main view. Alright, so to add SpotWeb into our Prowlarr, you go into the Prowlarr user interface, you go into add indexers, and then you're going to look for generic newsnab. So let's wait for this to do the search because my lab is a little slow. And here we go. We click where it says generic new snap with the NZB symbol here. And now we create the one for SpotWeb. We make sure that it is enabled and the sync profile is standard. And in the URL, we're going to put the IP of our NAS. And then the port that I specified for my instance. So in my case, it was 8071, that's correct. And then we put the API key that we got from SpotWeb here. So there we go. And then we don't have to put VIP expiration or anything like that because that's irrelevant. It's our own privately hosted indexer. And then in here, we can go into the advanced details and probably put this as the first item in our priority. So we mark that as 1 and we test the connection to the application here. In my case, since it still hasn't loaded anything yet, it's still working on that. It gave me a message saying that the query was successful, but no results were returned. So we are sure that it was able to connect properly. So even though we got that little error there, we can save this. And then that'll just add it to our list of indexers at the very top priority for NZBs. I still see that the application is retrieving stuff from Usenet, but it hasn't really found anything yet. So that's why I'm gonna give it more time and then show the result once it finds things. And the application is finally showing results, and as you can see here, we have a way on the left to filter for content that we want. I'm currently in the image section here, that's why it's showing all of those videos that are encoded X264 HD. You can look for different things, for example, in series, it'll give you series. You can look for books, you can look for music here, you can look for games, applications and all that. And the nice thing about it is that your Arrs are going to be able to query all of this information that is going to be stored in your own NZB indexer, relying entirely on your Usenet provider and the public SpotNet protocol that is available out there that has all the information of all the different spots that you can see in your instance. So I hope you liked this video. That's going to be it for this one. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so, and leave me comments in the comment section below, because most of the videos that I'm making recently are on things that you have asked me that you want to see featured on the channel. Remember also, I'm not monetizing the channel, and that's on purpose. You should not have received an ad from YouTube on my video, but that also means that I'm not making money from posting these videos and spending the time that I do on making these videos. So if you like the content and you find it useful, I'll really appreciate it if you help me with donations. In the description below, there's a link for PayPal where you can donate, or also you have a Bitcoin address where you can donate using Bitcoin if you like. And I'll see you in the next one. That's it for this one.